Detective Keisha Williams had been looking forward to this Saturday for weeks. After pulling double shifts for the past month, dealing with everything from domestic disputes to armed robberies, she desperately needed a break. The summer heat had been brutal in the city, and the concrete jungle where she worked offered little relief from the sweltering temperatures that seemed to bounce off every building and sidewalk. Her childhood friend, David, had been inviting her to his country club for months. "You work too hard, Keisha," he'd tell her every time they talked. "Come relax by the pool. You deserve it." David had grown up in the same neighborhood as Keisha, but his tech startup had taken off 5 years ago, and now he lived a completely different life. Still, he never forgot where he came from or the friends who had supported him along the way. That morning, Keisha woke up without an alarm for the first time in forever. No emergency calls, no court appearances, no paperwork waiting on her desk, just pure, beautiful silence. She stretched in her bed, feeling muscles she didn't even know were tense finally start to relax. The sunlight streaming through her bedroom window promised a perfect day. She spent extra time getting ready, choosing a simple black one-piece swimsuit and a flowing cover-up in bright blue. It felt strange not reaching for her uniform or her badge and gun. Instead, she packed a beach bag with sunscreen, a romance novel she'd been trying to finish for months, and a bottle of water. Simple pleasures that felt almost foreign after so many intense weeks at work. The drive to Willowbrook Country Club took her through parts of town she rarely visited during work hours. Tree-lined streets replaced the urban landscape she knew so well. Large houses sat back from the road behind perfectly manicured lawns. It was like entering a different world, one where people didn't worry about break-ins or gang violence or any of the problems that filled her daily reports. At the club's entrance, an elderly security guard smiled warmly and checked her guest pass against his list. "First time here?" he asked kindly. When she nodded, he gave her directions to the pool area and told her to have a wonderful day. His genuine friendliness surprised her. In her line of work, she'd grown used to people being nervous or defensive around law enforcement, even when she was off duty. The country club was impressive. Lush gardens lined the walkways, and the main building looked like something from a magazine. Tennis courts buzzed with activity, and she could hear the distant sound of golf carts and laughter. Everything looked pristine and peaceful. For someone who spent her days dealing with the darker side of human nature, this felt like stepping into a fairy tale. The pool area exceeded her expectations. The main pool sparkled brilliant blue under the afternoon sun, surrounded by comfortable lounge chairs and umbrellas. A smaller children's pool bubbled nearby, where kids splashed happily under their parents' watchful eyes. Servers moved quietly between the chairs, offering drinks and snacks to the guests. Classical music played softly in the background, just loud enough to add ambiance without being intrusive. Keisha found an empty chair away from the crowds, somewhere she could read in peace. The cushion was incredibly comfortable, nothing like the hard chairs at the police station. She adjusted the umbrella to create the perfect amount of shade and settled in with a satisfied sigh. This was exactly what she needed. The book in her hands was a welcome escape from reality. No crime scenes, no witness statements, no courtroom drama. Just a simple story about people finding love and happiness. She'd forgotten how nice it was to read something that didn't require analyzing evidence or looking for inconsistencies in testimony. Around her, families enjoyed their Saturday afternoon. Children's laughter mixed with adult conversation. A group of teenagers played volleyball in the shallow end while their parents watched proudly from nearby chairs. An elderly couple shared a quiet lunch at a poolside table, holding hands like newlyweds. It was the kind of scene that reminded Keisha why she became a police officer in the first place, to protect communities like this, to make sure families could enjoy simple moments of happiness without fear. The sun felt amazing on her skin. She'd been so busy lately that she'd barely seen daylight except through office windows or while rushing between crime scenes. Her body seemed to remember what relaxation felt like, muscles loosening with each passing minute. The stress that had been her constant companion for weeks began to melt away. A server approached and asked if she'd like anything to drink. She ordered a lemonade, something refreshingly normal after months of surviving on police station coffee and energy drinks. When it arrived, ice cold and perfectly sweet, she savored every sip. These were the moments that made all the difficult days worthwhile. She thought about calling her mother later to tell her about this perfect afternoon. Her mom always worried about her dangerous job, constantly reminding her to be careful and take care of herself. You can't help others if you don't help yourself first, she'd say. Today, finally, Keisha was taking that advice. The pool water looked incredibly inviting, but she was content just soaking up the peaceful atmosphere. Children played safely while parents relaxed nearby. Teenagers flirted and laughed without any of the edge or danger she saw in her work. Elderly members enjoyed quiet conversations and gentle activities. It was like a snapshot of how the world should be. As she turned a page in her book, Keisha smiled to herself. She'd been so focused on her career, on making detective, on proving herself in a challenging field, that she'd forgotten to enjoy life's simple pleasures. This afternoon was a reminder that there was more to life than work, no matter how important that work might be. The afternoon stretched ahead of her, full of promise and possibility. No radio calls, no emergencies, no split-second decisions that could change everything. Just sunshine, good book, and the luxury of having absolutely nowhere else to be. It was perfect. Little did she know that this peaceful moment was about to be shattered in ways she never could have imagined. Keisha had just found her rhythm in the book when a shadow fell across her chair. She looked up to see a woman standing directly in front of her, blocking the sun. The woman appeared to be in her 50s with perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive-looking jewelry that caught the light. Her white tennis outfit looked like it had come straight from a high-end boutique, and everything about her screamed money and status. "Excuse me," the woman said, her tone sharp and demanding attention. "I don't believe we've met." Keisha smiled politely, the same way she'd been taught to interact with the public during her police training. "Hi there. I'm Keisha. Beautiful day, isn't it?" She gestured toward her guest pass, which was clearly visible on the small table next to her chair. "My friend David invited me to enjoy the pool today." The woman's eyes narrowed as she glanced at the pass, then back at Keisha. "David who?" Her voice carried a suspicious edge that made Keisha's stomach tighten slightly. She recognized that tone from her work. It was the sound of someone who had already made up their mind about something. "David Chen," Keisha replied, keeping her voice friendly despite the growing tension. "He's been a member here for several years. We went to school together." "I know most of the members here," the woman said, crossing her arms over her chest. "I'm Victoria Hendricks. My family has belonged to this club for over 20 years. She spoke as if this gave her some kind of special authority. "And I've never seen you before." Keisha felt a familiar knot forming in her chest, the same feeling she got when a situation at work was about to go sideways. "Well, this is my first time here," she explained patiently. "David's been trying to get me to visit for months, but I've been too busy with work." Victoria's gaze swept over Keisha from head to toe, taking in her simple swimsuit and beach bag. "What kind of work do you do?" The question sounded more like an interrogation than polite conversation. "I work for the city," Keisha answered carefully. She'd learned long ago that mentioning she was a police officer could change the entire dynamic of a conversation, and right now she just wanted to get back to her book and her peaceful afternoon. "The city?" Victoria repeated, as if those words left a bad taste in her mouth. "And David just gave you this pass?" She picked up the guest pass from the table without asking, examining it closely like she was some kind of expert in club security. Keisha's training kicked in, and she worked to keep her voice calm and professional. "Yes, he did." "Is there a problem?" The gentleman at the front gate checked it and said everything was fine. "Harold's getting old," Victoria said dismissively, still holding the pass. "He probably didn't look at it carefully enough. These guest passes are supposed to be limited, you know. We can't just have anyone wandering around the club." The word anyone hung in the air with a weight that made Keisha's jaw clench. She'd heard that tone before, usually right before situations escalated in ways that required her professional intervention. "I understand the club has rules," she said carefully. "That's why David made sure to get me a proper guest pass and put me on the list." Victoria huffed and looked around the pool area as if searching for backup. A few other club members had started to notice their conversation, though most were trying to pretend they weren't listening. "The pool area is supposed to be members only on weekends," she declared, loud enough that Severa, all nearby families could hear. "It's one of the perks we pay for." Keisha felt her heart rate increasing, the way it did when she sensed a situation was about to require her professional skills. "Ma'am, I have a valid guest pass. If there's a problem, maybe we should ask club management to clarify the rules." Don't you ma'am me, Victoria snapped. I know what I'm talking about. I'm on the board here. She waved the guest pass in the air like evidence in a court case. This could be fake for all I know. People forge these things all the time. The accusation hit Keisha like a slap. In all her years as a police officer, she'd never been accused of using fake identification or trying to gain illegal access to anywhere. Why would you think it's fake? She asked, working hard to keep her voice level. Victoria's laugh was cold and calculating. Oh, please. Look around you. Do you really think you belong here? She gestured broadly at the pool area, at the expensive lounge chairs and the well-dressed families. This isn't exactly your typical crowd, is it? Several people were now openly staring at their conversation. A teenage lifeguard looked uncomfortable, clearly unsure whether he should intervene. An elderly couple at a nearby table had stopped their quiet lunch to watch the drama unfold. Even the children in the pool had noticed something was wrong, their happy splashing becoming more subdued. Keisha felt the familiar surge of anger that came with being prejudged, but her training helped her maintain control. What exactly are you suggesting? She asked quietly. I'm not suggesting anything, Victoria said, her voice rising. I'm stating facts. This is a private club with certain standards. We have rules about who can and cannot use our facilities, especially during peak hours. And what standards would those be? Keisha asked, though she already knew where this conversation was heading. Victoria seemed to realize that other people were listening because she lowered her voice slightly. Look, I'm sure you're a nice enough person, but this club has a certain atmosphere that we work very hard to maintain. Our members pay good money for exclusivity and peace of mind. The words hit Keisha like physical blows. Peace of mind. As if her presence somehow threatened the safety and comfort of everyone around the pool. As if she was some kind of danger that needed to be removed before she contaminated their perfect afternoon. A server approached cautiously, clearly sensing the tension. Is everything all right here, Mrs. Hendricks? He asked. Victoria turned to him with obvious relief. Actually, no. This woman is here with what appears to be a questionable guest pass. I think we need to verify her authorization to be in the pool area. The young server looked between them uncertainly. Ma'am, if she has a guest pass, just call security, Victoria interrupted. Let them sort it out. That's what they're paid for. Keisha felt the eyes of everyone around the pool focused on her. Children stared openly while their parents whispered behind their hands. The volleyball game had stopped entirely. Even the classical music seemed to have gotten quieter, as if the whole club was holding its breath to see what would happen next. She thought about her badge and identification in her bag, just a few feet away. One quick flash of her credentials would end this entire confrontation immediately. But something held her back. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was curiosity about just how far Victoria was willing to take this. Either way, she decided to see where this road led. Fine, Keisha said calmly. Call security. I'd be happy to speak with them about club policies. Victoria smiled triumphantly, clearly believing she'd won some kind of victory. She had no idea what was coming next. The security guard who arrived was the same friendly man who had greeted Keisha at the front gate. His name tag read Harold, and he looked genuinely confused as he approached the tense scene by the pool. Victoria immediately pounced on him before he could even assess the situation. Harold, thank goodness you're here, she said dramatically. This woman is in our pool area with what I believe is a fraudulent guest pass. I've been trying to explain our club policies to her, but she refuses to leave. Harold looked at Keisha with recognition and smiled. Ma'am, didn't I just check you in about an hour ago? You're David Chen's guest, right? His tone was pleasant and professional, clearly remembering their earlier interaction. That's right, Keisha confirmed, grateful for his calm demeanor. David put me on the guest list this morning. Victoria's face flushed red with frustration. Harold, you can't just take her word for it. Anyone can claim to know a member. We need to verify this properly. Mrs. Hendricks, Harold said patiently. I did verify it. She's on our guest list and her pass is legitimate. I processed it myself when she arrived. But Victoria wasn't backing down. If anything, Harold's confirmation seemed to make her more agitated. Well, maybe the system made an error. Maybe David doesn't realize what kind of person he's bringing around here. She looked pointedly at Keisha. We have a responsibility to our other members to maintain certain standards. A crowd was definitely gathering now. What had started as curious glances had evolved into open staring, Some people were discreetly taking photos with their phones, clearly sensing that something significant was happening. The pool area, which had been filled with relaxed conversation and children's laughter, now buzzed with tension and whispered speculation. Harold shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Hendricks, if Mr. Chen vouched for his guest, where is David anyway?" Victoria interrupted, looking around as if she expected him to materialize. "Shouldn't he be here supervising his guest? That's usually how these things work." Keisha felt her patience wearing thin. "I'm a grown woman. I don't need supervision to sit by a pool and read a book, don't you?" Victoria shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you need someone to explain how things work around here." She turned to address the growing crowd of onlookers. "This is exactly what I've been warning the board about. Once you start relaxing standards, where does it end?" A few people nodded in agreement, while others looked increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of Victoria's comments. An elderly gentleman near the pool bar shook his head disapprovingly, though it wasn't clear whether his disapproval was aimed at Victoria or at Keisha. Harold tried once more to diffuse the situation. "Mrs. Hendricks, perhaps we should discuss this privately with club management." "No," Victoria declared loudly. "This affects everyone here. Our members deserve to know what's happening in their club." She gestured toward Keisha like she was Exhibit A in a court case. "Look at her. Does she look like she belongs here? Does she look like someone who can afford to be around these kinds of facilities?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Several club members looked away uncomfortably, while others leaned forward with obvious interest. The teenagers who had been playing volleyball were now lined up at the pool's edge, watching the drama unfold like it was a television show. Keisha felt something shift inside her. She'd spent her career dealing with people in crisis, people making bad decisions, people letting their worst impulses control their actions. She recognized the look in Victoria's eyes, the look of someone who had convinced herself she was fighting a righteous battle, even as she was clearly in the wrong. "What exactly do you think I can't afford?" Keisha asked quietly. Victoria laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth or humor. "Please, look around you. The membership fees here cost more than most people make in 6 months. The initiation fee alone would probably cover your rent for a year. And you know this how?" Keisha pressed, her voice still calm but with an edge that made Harold take a step back. "It's obvious," Victoria said with a dismissive wave. "People like you don't usually move in these kinds of circles. No offense, but let's be realistic about the situation here." A woman sitting at a nearby table cleared her throat loudly. "Victoria, maybe you should..." "Should what, Linda?" Victoria whirled around to face her. "Should ignore the fact that our club is being used by people who have no business being here? Should we just pretend that everything is fine while our standards slip lower and lower?" "Maybe you should lower your voice," Linda suggested firmly. "You're making a scene." "I'm protecting our investment," Victoria shot back. "All of our investments. We pay premium prices for premium experiences. That includes not having to worry about who might be wandering around our facilities." More phones came out as Victoria's voice rose. The classical music that had been playing softly in the background seemed ridiculously inappropriate now, like a soundtrack to a disaster movie. Even the youngest children sensed something was wrong, some of them moving closer to their parents with worried expressions. David chose that moment to arrive, appearing at the pool area entrance with a smile that quickly faded as he took in the scene. "What's going on here?" he asked, hurrying over to where Keisha sat surrounded by the crowd. Victoria pounced on him immediately. "David, thank goodness. I was just explaining to your guest that there seems to be some confusion about pool privileges." David looked confused. "What kind of confusion?" "I put Keisha on the guest list this morning. Harold confirmed it when she arrived." "That's not the issue," Victoria said, her tone suggesting that David was being deliberately obtuse. "The issue is whether bringing certain types of people here is really in the best interests of the club." David's expression darkened. He was normally one of the most mild-mannered people Keisha knew, but she could see anger building behind his eyes. "Certain types of people? What exactly do you mean by that?" Victoria seemed to realize she might have pushed too far, but she was too committed to back down now. "You know what I mean, David. We have to be realistic about maintaining our club's reputation and atmosphere." "No, I don't know what you mean," David said firmly. "Why don't you explain it to me? And to everyone else here who's listening, Pool area had gone almost completely silent except for the gentle splash of water and the distant sound of tennis balls from the courts. Everyone was watching Victoria, waiting to see how she would respond to David's challenge. Keisha realized this was the moment of truth, the point where Victoria would either back down or double down on her prejudice. Based on what she'd seen, so far she had a pretty good idea which way this was going to go. Victoria took a deep breath and looked around at all the faces watching her. Then she made her choice. Victoria's face hardened with determination as she looked around at the expectant faces surrounding her. Instead of backing down, she seemed to draw energy from the attention, like a performer who had found her stage. "Fine, David," she said, raising her voice so everyone could hear clearly. "Since you want me to spell it out, I will. This club represents a certain standard of living, a certain quality of membership. When people join here, they expect to be surrounded by others who share their values and their lifestyle." David's jaw dropped. "Victoria, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that bringing people from different backgrounds into our space changes the whole atmosphere," Victoria continued, gesturing toward Keisha. "Look at her. Does she look like someone who belongs at Willowbrook Country Club? Does she look like someone who would fit in with our community?" The crowd around them was growing larger. People had stopped pretending to swim or read or eat. Even staff members had gathered at the edges of the scene, unsure whether they should intervene but unable to look away. Keisha felt a familiar calm descend over her, the same focused quiet she experienced during dangerous situations at work. Her training had taught her to stay composed when others lost control, to think clearly when emotions ran high. She reached slowly into her beach bag, her fingers closing around the leather wallet that held her badge and identification. "What I look like," Keisha said calmly, "is someone enjoying a day off at a private club where she was properly invited as a guest." Victoria scoffed. "A day off from what? Your job at the city? Let me guess, you work in some government office pushing papers around? Or maybe you're a social worker or something equally charitable." She said the word charitable like it was something distasteful. Several people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, clearly recognizing that Victoria had crossed a line from concern about club rules into something much uglier. "Victoria, stop," David said firmly. "You're embarrassing yourself in this club." "I'm trying to protect this club," Victoria shot back. "Someone has to be willing to ask the hard questions. Someone has to be willing to say what everyone else is thinking but is too polite to mention." She turned back to Keisha with a look of smug satisfaction. "The truth is, people like you make our members uncomfortable. They come here to relax and enjoy themselves with people who understand their lifestyle, their concerns, their values. They don't want to worry about whether their jewelry is safe or whether their children are being exposed to influences they'd prefer to avoid." A collective gasp went up from several people in the crowd. Even Harold looked shocked, his friendly demeanor replaced by obvious distress at what he was witnessing. Linda, the woman who had tried to quiet Victoria earlier, stood up from her table. "Victoria Hendricks, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is disgraceful." "What's disgraceful?" Victoria replied sharply, "is pretending that we all don't see exactly what's happening here. This person clearly doesn't belong in our environment, and everyone knows it. I'm just brave enough to say it out loud." Keisha stood up slowly, her beach bag in one hand. The crowd seemed to lean forward collectively, sensing that something significant was about to happen. The afternoon sun caught the water droplets on, her dark skin making her look almost luminous against the pristine pool backdrop. "You're absolutely right about one thing, Victoria," Keisha said, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent pool area. "I do have a job with the city." Victoria smiled triumphantly, clearly believing she had won some kind of victory. "I knew it. Probably some clerk position or—" "I'm a detective," Keisha continued, cutting her off smoothly. "Detective Keisha Williams, Metropolitan Police Department." She opened her wallet and held up her badge and police identification for everyone to see. The gold shield caught the sunlight, gleaming with an authority that made Victoria's smug expression falter for the first time. "I've been a police officer for 8 years," Keisha continued, her voice steady and professional. "I made detective 3 years ago. I work primarily in violent crimes. armed robbery, assault, domestic violence cases. Last month, I testified in a murder trial that put away a man who had been terrorizing families in the downtown area. The silence that followed was so complete that you could hear the filtration system humming in the pool. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, no sound coming out. David looked at his childhood friend with obvious pride and admiration. Keisha's been working double shifts for weeks, he added into the silence. She barely gets days off because she's so dedicated to protecting our community. Harold stepped forward, his earlier confusion replaced by clear respect. Detective Williams, I want to apologize for any inconvenience you've experienced here today. This is absolutely not how guests should be treated at our club. Victoria finally found her voice, but it came out as a whisper. You're a police officer? That's right, Keisha confirmed, closing her wallet but keeping it visible. The same police officer you've been suggesting might steal jewelry or be a bad influence on children. The same police officer you've been claiming doesn't belong around decent people. The crowd's murmur was growing louder, but it had changed completely in character. Where before there had been curiosity and some agreement with Victoria's complaints, now there was shock and disapproval directed entirely at Victoria herself. A man near the pool bar called out, "Victoria, you owe this officer an apology." "A huge apology," someone else added. Victoria looked around at the faces surrounding her, all of them now clearly on Keisha's side. The teenagers who had been watching, like it was entertainment, now looked at her with obvious disgust. Even some of the people who had initially seemed sympathetic to her concerns were shaking their heads in disappointment. I didn't know," Victoria stammered. "You didn't know because you didn't ask," Keisha replied calmly. "You made assumptions, based on how I look, where you think I come from, and what you think I could afford. You decided I was a threat to your safety and your children's well-being without knowing the first thing about me." She gestured around the pool area, at the families and individuals who had been watching the drama unfold. "The ironic thing is, these people you were so worried about protecting, I protect them every single day. When they call 911 because someone's breaking into their house or threatening their family, officers like me are the ones who show up to help." Victoria's face had gone pale beneath her perfectly applied makeup. She looked like someone who had just realized she'd made a catastrophic mistake but wasn't sure how to fix it. "I think you owe Detective Williams more than just an apology," David said, his voice carrying an edge Keisha had never heard before. "I think you owe everyone here an apology for the disgraceful display we just witnessed," the crowd murmured. Agreement, and all eyes turned back to Victoria, waiting to see what she would do next. Victoria stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, her face cycling through emotions like a broken traffic light. Shock, embarrassment, anger, and something that might have been the beginning of shame. The pool area remained eerily quiet, with even the children seeming to sense that something important was happening. I apologize," Victoria finally managed, though the words sounded forced and hollow. "I made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Keisha asked calmly. She wasn't trying to humiliate Victoria, but as a police officer, she'd learned that accountability required specifics, not vague admissions of wrongdoing. Victoria's jaw tightened. "I misjudged the situation." "How exactly did you misjudge it?" David pressed, clearly not satisfied with the non-apology. Several people in the crowd pulled out their phones, and it was obvious they were recording. Victoria noticed this, and her composure cracked a little more. In the age of social media, she was probably realizing that this moment might follow her far beyond the country club. I assumed things about Detective Williams that weren't true," Victoria admitted reluctantly. "What kinds of things?" asked Linda, the woman who had tried to stop Victoria earlier. She looked genuinely angry now. "Because from where I was sitting, it sounded like you were making some pretty ugly assumptions." Harold stepped forward diplomatically. "Mrs. Hendricks, perhaps this conversation should continue in private with club management." "Oh, no," Keisha said firmly. She made her accusations public. Her apology should be public too. She looked directly at Victoria. "You told everyone here that people like me make your members uncomfortable. That we might steal their jewelry or be bad influences on their children, that we don't belong around decent people. Were those mistakes too? Victoria's perfectly styled hair was beginning to wilt in the heat, and sweat beaded on her forehead despite the pool area's cooling misters. I was trying to protect the club's atmosphere. By suggesting that a police officer was a criminal? David asked incredulously. A teenage boy who had been watching from the volleyball area called out, "That's messed up, lady. Police officers are heroes." His comment seemed to break some kind of dam, and suddenly everyone had something to say. "My daughter wants to be a police officer when she grows up," said a mother holding a toddler. "Detective, thank you for your service," said the elderly gentleman from the pool bar. "Victoria, this is absolutely shameful," added another club member. Victoria looked around at the faces surrounding her, all of them now clearly against her. She seemed to realize that she had not just made a mistake, but had revealed something ugly about herself that couldn't be easily taken back. "I think I should go," Victoria said quietly, gathering her designer bag and towel. "That's probably a good idea," Harold agreed. "I'll be filing a report about this incident with the club management." As Victoria hurried away from the pool area, several people approached Keisha to apologize for what she had experienced and to thank her for her service. A young mother with 2 children told her that her husband was also a police officer, and she knew how hard the job could be. An elderly couple insisted on buying her lunch. The teenagers who had been playing volleyball asked if they could take a picture with her. David sat down in the chair next to Keisha's, shaking his head in disbelief. "I'm so sorry, Keisha. I had no idea anyone here would behave like that." "It's not your fault," Keisha assured him. "And honestly, it's not even that unusual. People make assumptions about police officers all the time, both positive and negative. Usually it's not quite so dramatic, though." Harold approached them with obvious embarrassment. "Detective Williams, on behalf of Willowbrook Country Club. I want to sincerely apologize for what happened here today. Mrs. Hendricks's behavior does not represent our values or our community." "I appreciate that," Keisha said, "but I hope you understand that this probably wasn't really about club rules or membership policies. This was about something much deeper." Harold nodded sadly. "I know, and I promise you, the management will be addressing this situation thoroughly." Over the next few days, the story spread far beyond the country club. Someone had posted video of the confrontation on social media, and it quickly went viral. The local news picked up the story, focusing on the irony of a woman accusing a police officer of being a threat to public safety. Victoria's real estate business suffered immediate consequences. Several clients canceled their contracts after seeing the video, saying they didn't want to work with someone who would treat people that way. Her social media accounts were flooded with negative comments. The country club's board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss her membership, but the story also sparked positive conversations. The police department where Keisha worked received dozens of supportive calls and emails. Community groups reached out to discuss bias, training, and ways to build better relationships between different parts of the community. Keisha found herself invited to speak at schools and community events. About her experience, she talked about the importance of not making assumptions about people based on appearances and how prejudice hurt everyone, including the people who harbored it. "What Victoria did to me was wrong," Keisha would tell audiences. But in a strange way, it also created an opportunity for important conversations. It reminded people that police officers are human beings who deserve the same respect and dignity as everyone else. And it showed that prejudice can blind us to the very people who are working hardest to protect us. The country club implemented new policies about guest treatment and began hosting diversity workshops for members and staff. They invited Keisha back as a guest speaker, and she accepted, hoping to help prevent similar incidents in the future. David continued to invite Keisha to the club, and she continued to accept. The first few visits felt a little awkward, with people either being overly friendly or obviously avoiding her. But eventually things normalized. She became just another club guest who happened to be a police officer, someone who served the community and deserved to relax by the pool on her days off. Victoria never returned to Willowbrook Country Club. Her membership was quietly terminated after the board's investigation. She eventually moved to another city, though whether by choice or necessity was unclear. The incident became a teaching moment that extended far beyond one person's prejudice. It reminded a community that heroes come in all colors, and that the people we're quickest to judge might be the very ones who would risk their lives to protect us. And for Keisha, it reinforced something she'd always known but sometimes forgot in the stress of her demanding job: that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Even on what was supposed to be a simple day off by the pool,